All right, Mike versus the world. Let's go spicy here, Mike.
Spicy.
Just as spiciness. The North Carolina Tar Heels are quietly putting together a decent record on the season. They still have a couple games in front of them. They have to win, of course. And obviously, Michigan has been a top 3, 4, 5 team all year long. But the debate for today is, let's assume that Michigan loses to Ohio State and they have one loss, and North Carolina wins out on the rest of their schedule, which, again, big if, we understand that, but give us a little license here. Your argument here is that North Carolina would be a better one-loss team than Michigan, Mike. Am I? And I'm here to tell you that you might be one of the craziest people I have ever met on the internet. And the internet, by the way, full of crazy people. Just ask Elon Musk. Here's the thing, Mike. I'm going to start my argument just with North Carolina. I'm going to start with this thing right here. 63-61. They barely eke out a win against App State, right? 35-28. They barely eke out a win against Georgia State. Miami, who's a dumpster fire, 27-24, barely eke out a win there. Duke, solid team, getting better, 38-35, barely eke out a win there. Wake Forest, 36-34, barely eke out a win there. Virginia, again, a lot of things going on in Virginia, by the way, but 31-28, a win there. They're not a dominant football team. Yeah, they're winning football games, but these are teams they should be winning better or bigger than they are. Yeah. Michigan has just been running roughshod through everybody, with the exception of maybe a Maryland team this year that kind of gave them a little bit of trouble at home. Outside of that, Michigan has been a dominant team throughout the year. I think North Carolina is good, but I don't know how good they really are. I mean, they're eking these games out. They're one bounce away on any of these games from actually having 2 losses at this point. So now I will tell you this. Hold on, the world will concede to you that you have a matchup looming with Clemson,
right?
Which would, if they beat Clemson, would probably be the best win between the two teams, right? Because we're assuming that at this point that Michigan has lost to Ohio State. Michigan's win against Penn State. It's kind of debatable. I need to see what happens with Penn State here on out, but it would be one of those. So it would be one of those two teams, but I just think Michigan is a better team overall. They've been a more dominant team. Sure, Carolina's won some games, but I also don't know that I would say, hey, that's a much better football team. So I'm going to go Michigan just because North Carolina doesn't seem like they always have it firing on all cylinders.
I don't think North Carolina would be favored in this matchup. I think they would struggle certainly against the power running offense of Michigan. You could argue Michigan's defense is good enough to maybe slow them down. Drake May is exceptional, and no one's been able to really slow him down this year. But to your point, those close wins over average football teams. But I'm not impressed with Michigan's schedule. I hate it. Colorado State, Hawaii, UConn start the season. So that gives you an opportunity to get your new quarterback. I know they had the platoon system in the beginning, but it gets you the opportunity to get your new quarterback. And FAMU, App State, Georgia State isn't murderer's row. But App State is coming off a Texas A&M win, and Texas A&M sucks. I know that, but they're a formidable football team. At least none of these first 3 for Michigan are formidable whatsoever. There's just no debate about that. You beat Iowa by 13, Maryland by 7. You took care of Indiana. Whoop-de-doo. Michigan State sucks. Rutgers is horrible. Nebraska is awful. These are dominant wins over horrendous football teams. Illinois is out of the top 25 now, so there's a win that doesn't count for you in a top 25. You got one top 25 win, which is Penn State, who lost in similar fashion to Ohio State, and then you got the loss to Ohio State. So a better loss, certainly, because UNC lost to Notre Dame, who's in the top.
I was wondering if you're going to bring that up. I was leaving that bullet in the gun for my next argument, Mike. Let's compare loss to loss. Yeah. A Notre Dame team that you, on a previous Mike versus the World, where if you're following these in order, you probably already heard that one, where Mike tells you that Notre Dame is terrible and they're trash and they don't belong in the top 25. So their loss.
Overrated.
I think you said trash. Their loss is against a bad Notre Dame team, where Michigan's loss will be against what we then assume will be a college football playoff team in the Ohio State Buckeyes. Sure. And Notre Dame beat them 45-32. What if Michigan loses to Ohio State 28-27? Very possible, right? We don't know that yet. So for me, you can't lose to Notre Dame and say that you're the best one-loss team. You can't do that.
I'm not saying they're the best one-loss team. I'm saying they're a better team.
Or a better one-loss team.
resume-wise
I
than
mean, the best
Michigan.
between these two, yes.
Michigan also ducked competition completely. I mean, they rescheduled Virginia Tech. They rescheduled UCLA because they wanted to give Jim Harbaugh 7 home games because he stunk and he wasn't getting it done. And they didn't foresee that they would make the playoff last year, and they didn't foresee that there'd be
because of that, North Carolina is a better one-loss team because Michigan brass has no balls. I mean, I understand you're not wrong, but that's not applicable to this debate. Well, that's true. Yes,
that schedule is horrendous. It's awful. There's Penn State is your only win. Your only win. At least with North Carolina, if they win out, you got Clemson. So does that offset Penn State? I think Clemson's slightly better. Yes, they lost to Notre Dame, and Notre Dame beat UNC, all that, whatever. But Clemson's a better win than Penn State. To me, you got NC State hanging into the top 25, but they just lost to BC. Yeah. So they stink. So neither of these teams have any good wins. Let's put it that way. They got one. Okay. No. If UNC wins out, they got Clemson. And if Michigan loses to Ohio State, they got Penn State. And then you compare the rest of their schedule. And honestly, I would take these teams with a pulse, at least, versus this Big Ten. This Big Ten schedule is just
sure.
I mean, so we expected Iowa to be better, right? We expected that to be a better win. Iowa sucks. Yes. We expected Michigan State to be much better. They suck. It's lesser of a win. We expected Nebraska to have a pulse this year, probably, and they did.
Did we?
That's a crap win too. And I'm not debating that Wake Forest is any good. I'm not debating that Pitt is any good. I'm not debating that Duke is any good, or Miami or Virginia Tech. I mean, these losses suck too. But at the very least, UNC wasn't ducking opponents to set up their schedule so that it would be a cupcake, coast into the Ohio State game. And there are better teams that they've beaten overall here. They don't have the better loss. Notre Dame is not a better loss than Ohio State. I'll give you that. They have the better win. I think Clemson's a better win than Penn State.
Sure,
then it comes down to garbage. Then it comes down to which dumpster you're picking from. And I'm picking from the dumpster that is powder blue because they're better dumpster dive teams.
But my dumpster has been a little bit more consistent, where UNC's had to struggle to win some of these games against inferior opponents. Where my dumpster's just going down the road, knocking rearview mirrors off of cars. Mike, your dumpster's like falling in potholes, needs to push out a little bit. Like my dumpster's just cruising along, man, cruising along. Your dumpster's leaking oil. There's a banana peel coming out of the side. Like my dumpster's smooth.
I can't believe you went to the style points in dumpster diving. It's just, there is no style points in dumpster diving. It's just all banana peels.
Well, you're leaving me no option here. I mean, you're leaving me no option.
Disgustingness. I mean, and I could go through the records. I mean, I'm too lazy to do so. But I can guarantee you North Carolina's opponents have a better combined record than Michigan. There's no doubt in my mind because you've got Nebraska, you got Rutgers, you got Michigan State, you got Indiana. You got Iowa, you got UConn, which has 5 wins, a stunning 5 wins. I thought they would have 1 this season, but Hawaii.
Fighting Jim Moore Juniors, yeah.
I love them, but Hawaii is one of the worst teams on the planet, and Colorado State's probably worse than them. So, if we went record by record, which I probably should have done, but I don't prep for these at all, as you know, I would think North Carolina has a better overall record. So. Let's look at this. UConn's 5-5. Now, we all talk about how bad Miami is, right? They're horrible, but they're 5-5. So maybe that's a dumpster. Would you rather have a victory over Miami at Miami or a home win at UConn? Which would you rather have? Which dumpster do you choose?
Well, that's a conference game versus a non-conference game.
Well, that's the other thing too. The conference, even though the ACC sucks, even though Virginia Tech sucks, even though Miami sucks. And Duke and Pitt and Virginia and Wake Forest are all blah. It's a better conference, sadly. The Big Ten, at least the Michigan version of the Big Ten, is horrendous. There's really no debating that. I mean, they're cross teams. Illinois, which is falling apart at 7-3, and big surprise this season, and very good, fun season for Brett Bielema. But come on. They're starting to come up, to reality. You got Iowa, who can't score a point. and then you've got Nebraska. That's your cross division victories this year. There's no Minnesota in here. There's no Purdue in here, and these aren't.
Well, but they also beat an 8-2 Penn State, a 6-4 Maryland, a 5-5 Michigan State. If you can have Miami's 5-5, I can have Michigan State's 5-5.
You can, and listen, isn't this a better argument than you thought it was, though?
I'm also going to have Illinois 7-3.
Yeah, I got Wake Forest.
Is there
4 or 7-4? Whoop-de-doo. Who cares?
Yeah, nobody really cares at this point. This argument,
well, it has 6 wins. Whoop-de-doo. I'm telling you, it's
closer than you would think. Yes,
North Carolina is good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying North Carolina is good. My point of all this is that the how ludicrous it sounds to say what you did. Mike versus the world. UNC is a better 1-loss team than Michigan, depending on how it shakes out. Sounds so unbelievably dumb. But as we dig into this dumpster, as we push the raccoons aside and we get deep in the garbage, it's not as ludicrous as you think. And a case could be made, certainly, for my end and your end. It's not one-sided here. And that's kind of the point of this, I guess.